Let's move on to the LessWrong posts.
Awesome.
So first one up is Humanism a Religion-Substitute?
Stephen, I feel like we could do an entire episode about this kind of thing, but let's go ahead and not do a whole episode and just talk about the post instead.
Yeah, let's briefly summarize this and put that on the back burner for a deep dive, because I think that trying to be succinct about it, I think the main difference will be like that he's talking about something slightly different than the thing that you've been pushing for the last couple of years.
I
And
think so.
they have some overlap, but
Definitely.
and I think a lot of people could levy these same criticisms at what you're doing, but I think your project is actually different.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what he's talking about. So he starts off, suppose you were to put me into an fMRI scanner and take a movie of my brain's activity levels while I watched a space shuttle launch. The fMRI might, maybe not, resemble the fMRI of a devout Christian watching a nativity scene. Should an experimenter attain this result, there's a lot of people out there, both Christians and some atheists, who would gloat, haha, space travel is your religion.
Oh.
Yep. His rebuttal to their imagined response is already ready. He says, but that's drawing the wrong category boundary. It's like saying that because some people once tried to fly by irrational means, no one should ever enjoy looking out of an airplane window on the clouds below. I like that.
Yeah. I think a large part of that feeling of awe and wonder when you are watching a space shuttle launch is I see right now I'm slightly annoyed at Wes because I hear him yelling at me in his
Not
voice.
to
Don't use the word spiritual.
spiritual.
Yeah.
I
But
heard you
Wes-
trying to use it.
Yeah, but it's literally a spiritual experience. That is what the word means.
This
And
is what the word means to you, and that's legit.
the main problem here, I think, is that a lot of people, this is also back in written in the New Atheism Wars days, there are people who conflated spiritual experiences with religion. And while they are very linked, because I think religion uses spiritual experiences, and honestly, that may be why spiritual experiences are universal in the human species, or almost universal. It allowed there to be this hook in our psychology that religion could use, and therefore it spread. They're two different things. And so if someone said, haha, space travel is your religion, they're confusing religion and spiritual experiences, and they're not the same thing. That is a thing that would now annoy me, because I would say you don't understand the difference between these two things, and you can't conflate them like that.
And that distinction has been articulated, even within like the new atheist community for decades, but I don't think it's received enough attention. I mean, there's a difference between, a transcendent experience, whether it's, brought on by watching a space shuttle or taking drugs or whatever, and I was going to say, and, somebody having a really thoughtful and productive prayer session or something, right? But they're actually really, really similar. It's just one involves something that they, the person experiencing the thing hinging the supernatural component to it, whereas another one doesn't. And so you suck out all the supernaturalism, and there's still a lot there. The best parts.
Yeah.
I had to grab this because, I'll read it and then explain. Yudkowsky goes on, he says, now, to be fair to the religionists, this is not just a gloating assumption. There are atheists who have religion-shaped holes in their minds. I've seen attempts to substitute atheism or even transhumanism for a religion. The result is invariably awful. Utterly awful. Absolutely, objectively awful. Is he calling you out, Inyash?
I think he's trying. I haven't actually tried to make a religion yet. I agree with him that the results so far seem to be pretty bad in a large variety of ways. Some of them just in the terms of that they failed, and some of them in that they go over the edge and become like weird culty things that take over people's lives in a bad way, like Scientology. But I don't think it has to be this way. I don't know, maybe. Like the rational solstice has been around for 14 years now. So started, I think, maybe the same year he wrote this or the year after. And they've been experimenting with this sort of atheism religion thing. And it works to some degree. I think it still needs more work to get there. I think this is where I could get into an entire episode of content.
Do you want to just leave it at that and we'll leave it as a cliffhanger, or do you want to...
Yeah, I should probably just leave it at that, because I'm trying to think of like, how can I say more on this without going into like an hour of stuff? What I'm trying to say is that religion can be incredibly useful, and you don't have to have a religion-shaped hole in your mind in order to want the benefits that you can get from religion. And also, wanting transcendent, spiritual, connective experiences is not the same thing as having a religion-shaped hole. And I think it is conceding a lot to the religionists to say that they're the same thing. Almost all humans have some desire for experiences like that and connection with other humans. And that doesn't mean they have a religion-shaped hole. It just means that they're normal, psychologically healthy humans. A religion claiming that that's a religion-shaped hole is a lot like them saying that if you have morality, then that proves that you are reliant upon religion.
Yeah, I like that analogy. And I think Ikoski agrees with you on the first point there, too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of fact that people can be moved deeply to the point of tears or life-changing decisions based off of experiences that they have without any supernaturalism involved.
I do wonder how he feels about these things nowadays because, he goes to the rational solstices. I'm curious about his emotional connection to them, what he thinks of them, and the fact is that they are an attempt to recreate religious ritual. They use the term ritual often in describing them. Raymond Arnold, who started the first ones, has said this is literally based on my childhood religion that I was grown up in. I think there was some value in it, and we can take that value and bring it to the rationalist community. I've spoken with other people who run the solstice and their rituals in their communities. Most of them try to add their own flavor of bringing back some part of their childhood religion to it. But that doesn't mean that there's a religion-shaped hole necessarily. It just means that they can see a thing of value, much like if we were to get rid of all government, we would still probably want some things that government does and find a way to incorporate them.
I like that analogy, too.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, Ikoski can't hate these things, otherwise he wouldn't go to them, right? So
Yeah.
I think that they're fulfilling a different purpose, but let's avoid diving too deep into it, and maybe we can just push through the post here. But I do want to talk about this at length at some point.
Okay. I pulled out a thing that he said. If a rocket launch is what it takes to give me a feeling of aesthetic transcendence, I do not see this as a substitute for religion. I agree with him. Again, I guess that's what I've just been saying the past 10 minutes. But I also think that that's the problem, actually. They never could be a substitute for religion because they're not the same kind of thing. And the people who try to use just having these spiritual experiences as a substitute for religion are failing, because it's not a substitute for religion. It is an experience, and a religion is something else entirely.
Yep.
Well, he says that attempts to recreate religion by the literal example he gives is by creating hymns that are not religious in nature. He says anti-religious hymns to how there are no God, but he says the results will, without exception, suck. Why? Because they're being imitative, because they have no motivation for writing the hymn except a vague feeling that since churches have hymns, they ought to have one too.
That's the kind of trap I imagine people falling into if we're like, oh, let's make a religion. And it's like, so
Yes.
we have to write songs and meet at the same time every week and eat the same, have a snack at the same, or whatever parts of the rituals you want to suck out of various religions or whatever. It would just feel imitative.
Yeah. I do think this is one of the major problems with the solstices as we are practicing them right now, is that they are fairly imitative. That is kind of intentional by the people who designed them, because the things they experienced when they were children worked. But I agree with Eliezer here that they are missing a vital component.
And I think that there's a difference if you're imitating something, but that's what you're doing, and you know that like this isn't the real thing. That self-awareness brings a certain kind of balm to how shitty it could be, right? Like I think the solstices are better than they would be otherwise, because this imitation is done with open eyes and intention. It's not just like, oh, I'm kind of just imitating this thing from childhood, and again, it's not the hymn to why God doesn't exist or something, right? So I think that it allays a lot of that suckiness by having that self-awareness.
And I just want to reiterate, I know I'm kind of shitting on the solstices here a bit, and I don't want to do that, because they are moving and good experiences. They're
not religious experiences for you.
Right. The attempt to use humanism or transhumanism as their core doesn't work for me, and maybe that's just for me personally, and maybe for other people it does work, but
I wouldn't want to make those things into religions anyway.
Well, I do want to reiterate that they're actually really good rituals, and I've literally cried at one of them. It was so good. I've certainly felt well. Let me take that back. I've cried at two of them. They're very memorable. They're very emotionally moving. I think they're good things, and I'm glad we have them. And I'm glad we're continuing to experiment and make these more what we want. Like, there's in any nascent movement, there's going to be a lot of experimenting and figuring out how to make this work. There is no, as far as I know, science of profundity and religious experience yet, especially in a world where we know that there is no magic and there are no gods. So what do we do? I don't know. We're figuring it out. And these people have found out some very good and powerful things, and I really recommend the experience. But I think there's something that isn't quite there. And I think, honestly, one really good thing we could find out from the post-rats is how they managed to so consistently get strong spiritual religious vibes working through their stuff despite not having a god belief.
Sounds worth investigating. Just throwing this out there, one thing that religions have that are awesome and should be mimicked for anything trying to copy that project is relics.
Yes.
Relics are tight.
They are. Like, one of the things I mentioned is that one of the cool things about cathedrals is they always have dead people inside them, like literal people who have died. Relics are similar to that. And Jesus, as transhumanists, we have a number of relics that we could have, right?
I don't see why not. Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of the Demon Core, but on the other hand, maybe we don't want something that'll kill everybody around with lethal radiation if you mishandle it. But what sort of relic are you thinking of?
I hadn't thought of any yet. I mean, part of the profundity of relics is their ancientness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's no fun to have a relic that we just made this year, but cryopreserved mouse or something, like if you're going to a transhumanist religious ceremony kind of thing, that's just the first thing that pops into mind. But whatever it is, maybe find, for example, Roger Bacon's diary, like that would be the relic to pass around. And, people could lie about, oh yes, this is a page from his actual diary. And the whole
Yeah.
enterprise of faked relics would have to be a staple of this as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that shards of the cross that Jesus hung on, if you were to combine all the ones that people sold over the years, would make many houses.
Yes. Maybe if Eliezer has jolted down some notes or even wrote some drafts of methods of rationality on paper, and those are still existent somewhere, those could be intro relics.
Yeah. Well, we'll put that in the back burner. His second point here, this is where I think he gets into the important difference between imitation and doing it properly, is that if we had never made the original mistake, the mistake of inventing religions or supernaturalism or whatever you want to, if you want to keep religions around, would this song, this art, this ritual, this way of thinking still make sense? And I think that's a great litmus test. If humanity had never made the original mistake, there'd be no hymns to the non-existence of God, but there'd still be marriages. There'd be the notion of an atheistic marriage ceremony makes perfect sense. There'd still be community bondings and stuff like that. So,
and lots of atheists still get married. So, as proof.
Yeah.
He says, in a human world where religion never had existed, there would still be people who got tears in their eyes watching a space shuttle launch.
It's hard to see how that couldn't be true.
Yeah. Although I also think that, again, these two facts are related. And if there had never been religions, then spirituality wouldn't have been as strongly selected for.
All right. I'm looking forward to this long conversation.
Okay. He says, a good atheistic hymn is simply a song about anything worth singing about that doesn't happen to be religious. And I really wanted to pull this out and give it a 100% react because I have a friend who goes to a bar in New York when she's there where they all gather around a piano and sing show tunes at the top of their lungs. And she loves it, and she calls it her church because that is where she has these experiences. And I have other things that I think of as my church. They don't have to involve a belief in a God. They can be based purely on physical things. So, yeah, there is so many things that you can find to give you this that are not based on a ridiculous belief in some sort of creative personality that exists outside of space-time and cares about what you do personally.
Yeah. And just so actually I get an excuse to correct my pronunciation of the word Spinozing. I was saying Spinoza-ing before. I think that the only small nitpick I would have with that is that if you told somebody I'm going to go to church, they have a very
Mhm.
specific idea of what you're saying. They don't imagine you're going to a bar to sing show tunes.
Right. I mean, that's why you would clarify if you were saying that.
Right. This label already has a handle on it, right?
Right. If you were talking to someone who didn't know that that your use is different, you should clarify. But also, if there became a large enough community that there were people who literally got together and sung show tunes around a piano as part of their spiritual worship, then you could legitimately call that church and not have to clarify anymore because there's an actual sect that does that. Like when Quakers go to church, they sit around in an empty room in silence for 1 to 2 hours, and sometimes people are moved to speak, and that's not what I think of as church either, but that's literally their church. So they usually don't clarify unless people ask, like, what are the details of how you worship?
That's a good point. I just, it's one of those things that I think terms like church and religion and whatnot still, I think, bristle me in a way that they don't you. Which is interesting because you had a
Yeah.
much more damaging religious upbringing than I did. I think that I disliked a lot of the equivocation in the arguments that I saw back in those days, and this feels like something that would play into that. But that doesn't make it wrong. It's just it's my association with it.
Up until 3 or 4 years ago, I had just as strong of that bristly reaction to the point where, I wouldn't go to the solstice rituals. There was an attempt to have one here in Denver, I don't know, a decade ago, 8 years ago. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but I'm not going to go. It was just way too religious for me. And I don't know exactly what has gotten me past that. Maybe it's just been enough time away from that and from the worst aspects of it that now I'm like, okay, I can see the good parts and I can try to get the good parts without all the bad parts.
I can dig it. Plus, you had some transcendent experiences.
That's true. I've taken LSD since then. I've had some amazing experiences in foreign countries, not on LSD, just trying to explore my own inner shit. So
Well, you wrote a great post on your blog about an experience you had in an old church, or I guess a cathedral, and
mhm.
so I think that it made that connection kind of inescapable for
Yeah.
that moment. So I think I can totally dig that.
Yeah, I think that was kind of when it started, when I went to England and like was literally being led around by this tiny god in my pocket, like we talked about before. And I was like, how is this possible? And everything just started tumbling down then.
Yeah. Well, trying to think of an analogy about building something out of broken down stuff, but it's not coming to me.
I see what you're gesturing at.
Great.
Cool.
Well, consider it gestured. Let's see. He says, reverse stupidity is not intelligence. If humanity had never made the original mistake, no one would be trying to avoid things that vaguely resembled religion. Believe accurately, then feel accordingly. Maybe that's what you've gotten over.
I think that's probably why I pulled that quote out, because exactly that.
Yeah.
I've spent most of my life trying to avoid those things, and now I'm not anymore.
And I think that's awesome. Some people have bad associations with the stuff that they just don't want to be reminded of, and that's legit too. But you're like, what? I'm not going to let those people ruin this thing for me. I'm going to still have these cool experiences.
I was just thinking, man, I really hope I'm not fucking myself over, my brain and my emotional system and all that by doing this. I realize I'm playing with fire.
As long as you're careful, playing with fire is awesome.
Aw, that's a damn good point. Thank you.
Have you ever actually played with fire?
Depends on what you mean. I think yes, as the short answer. Like I've actually made that like little garage homemade napalm thing you could make as a kid. And,
Yeah, it's great.
yeah.
Just be careful.
Yeah. Right.
And don't play with fire, kids. But if you do, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Make sure you have sand around. A lot of it.
All right. Well, he closes this one off by saying that the choice between God and humanity is not just a choice of drugs. Above all, humanity actually exists.
Yeah. It's a good line.
Yeah.
He has great bangers, man.
And it doesn't at all lead us smoothly into the next LessWrong post here, Scarcity.
This post feels like it's mainly just a setup for the upcoming posts. So
It is,
it's
yeah.
pretty short.
He pulls a lot of quotes out of Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, Science, and Practice, which I also have owned several copies of, and now just give away PDFs because I got sick of buying them.
I believe I have a copy that you gave me, and I swear to God, I'm actually going to read it sometime in the very near future.
It's a great skim. It's
short.
It's actually engaging, yeah, and it's fun. It asks you. I was going to say it's a great skim, but it's more just like you can read it at skim speed and still take everything in.
Awesome.
It asks you to do exercises like at the end of each chapter to make sure you got the concept, and I think those are actually valuable. And it is a quick read, and it's It's a great self-defense book.
Nice.
I'm no longer I have explicit policies now that I use whenever the situation is appropriate to just completely avoid being taken in by hucksters. For whatever reason, the community I live in is a relatively new construction, and we still get people coming to the door all the time about, hey, we want to buy home security. How about this exterminator service or whatever? And I always say, no, I'm not going to sign anything right now. But if you have a website, I can check it out. Well, the deal only lasts until, since we'll already got here to the end of the day or something. I'm like, you know what? Then no. And I just tell them, like, I don't sign things under time pressure like that. That is a very common tactic, and it is in Chapter 6, Scarcity. If I remember correctly, this is Chapter 6.
Excellent.
It is a very common tactic. But scarcity, we should probably define, as the term is used in social psychology, is when things become more desirable when they appear less obtainable.
It's neat that they called it scarcity, I guess. As always, having the same word for many things can sometimes be confusing. But, if they can use the word scarcity, then gosh darn it, other people can use the word spirituality.
What do you use scarcity to mean? Like an actual lack of resources?
Yes.
I see. Yeah, that does seem like an important difference. I guess you might call it psychological scarcity, but that's too many syllables.
I mean, basically, once you know, you're like, oh, okay, now I know how you're using the term. It's fine.
Hey, that's a point against the argument from Spinozing. So
it captures the emotion that word is pointing at in both cases. That's the important part. It depends on what you want words to do, but if you're using words to point to an emotion, this is the correct word for both those cases. He also says, similarly, information that appears forbidden or secret seems more important and trustworthy.
Yeah, and throughout the post, he's citing examples of various cases like this. There's a short one. Actually, I wonder, some of these experiments are at this point almost 50 years old. I wonder if they replicate, just even at all. But this one was actually real. So buyers for supermarkets told by a supplier that beef was in scarce supply gave orders for twice as much beef as buyers told it would be readily available. Buyers that told that beef was in scarce supply, and furthermore, that information about the scarcity was itself scarce, the shortage was not general knowledge, ordered 6 times as much beef.
That's kind of crazy. And I understand, like, oh shit, it's scarce. All right, I got to stock up right now. But then they're told, but nobody else knows it's scarce. Don't tell anyone. They're like, okay, give me 6 times as more. I'm like, what? Why? Just because the information is scarce, does that change your actions?
The first part actually makes sense, right?
Yes.
You're like, okay, You mean I won't be able to order it next week? Then yeah, I'll order twice as much this week, sure. But the fact that the knowledge of the scarcity is itself scarce, you'd think, oh, well, that means that no one else is going to stockpile. That means I don't have to extra stockpile. You would think they'd buy more if they believed everyone around them knew that it was scarce too. Yeah. Like we saw with people hoarding toilet paper for some goddamn reason during the plague.
Right.
I mean, of all the things, that's like not in the top 10 of my survival supplies,
No.
But it was like the one thing that was so hard to find for weeks. Oh, man.
And also because there's so many substitutes. Like they're inferior substitutes, but you can, in a pinch, use paper towels or tissue Kleenex or wet wipes. Like there's a number of other things.
Removable shower handle,
Removable shower handle?
What am I trying to say? My shower's on I
see. Use it like as a bidet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like it's not exactly a substitute for the real thing, but it's just like, again, why was this the thing people fixed to? The Purell I understood, right?
Yeah.
Toilet paper, not so much.
I mean, because butt stuff always gains attention.
I guess so. But yeah, the psychological reactance is what they would term that response as. When you tell people they can't do something, they'll just try even harder. There was that old joke about Obama being a great gun salesman. I think they say this about every time a Democrat is in office, but if there's any mention of like, well, maybe we could make it slightly harder to acquire some kind of firearm, then everyone's like, oh my God, I need to go out and stockpile ammo and whatever, right? Even though the 4,000 bullets you already have is probably going to be plenty to last you the rest of your life.
Oh, I don't know. 4,000 bullets isn't that much as long as you're, continuing to keep your skills up and train. Assuming you go to the range at least once a year, and
no, for sure. I mean, you'll burn through them, but this is assuming that you'll never be able to buy any ever again. Not that it's just going to be scarce for a while,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, in a real post-world apocalypse, you get to take all the ammo of the people you kill. So,
right. So yeah, there's a bunch of examples. They're really fun to read.
So there was one example that he pulled out, and this was one from that he cites Broder 1959. I have no idea if this is, again, replicable or how stringent the science was, but here's what he found, or here's what he said. When a driver said he had liability insurance, experimental jurors awarded his victim an average of $4,000 more than if the driver said he had no insurance. If the judge afterward informed the jurors that information about insurance was inadmissible and must be ignored, jurors awarded an average of $13,000 more than if the driver had no insurance. And that seems insane.
That does seem insane.
Part of the reason I want to pull this out is because it's not clear to me why this is in the scarcity post. Is it just because they assume that the guy either has money or doesn't?
No, I mean, I think that originally that's what it is. That like, oh, if you have insurance, fine, give them extra money. Insurance money doesn't matter, which is like, Jesus, people, come on, don't be dumb. But
it's kind of not real money.
Right? I mean, it's not really real.
Well, I just as a brief aside, the car that I bought in 2020 is a 2011, and as such is by a wide margin the newest car I've ever owned. And that summer it got hail damage, and I was like, you know what, I'll pay $500 to get the hail damage fixed. And because it was an insurance claim, they billed insurance like $5,700 for repairing the hail damage. I can't believe that if I went to a body shop myself and said, hey, can you guys off some of the, take some of these dings out, that they charge me almost $6,000.
It's a common problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole diffusion of responsibility. Like the jurors can see the driver and be like, Jesus, $4,000 is a lot for this guy. Whereas when they can't see all the people that are covered by that insurance company and each of them paying a little bit more, to them, that's not real. So once the hurt is spread among many people, it's just like, oh yeah, let's do more damage.
It's just dust specks.
Exactly.
If you really want to have your if this will grind your gears. When I bought Paxlovid a few months ago, a few weeks, I don't know, it was $25. The non-insured price was $1,600.
Jesus Christ.
So they
for what it's worth, the insurance did not pay that much.
I guess I just wonder what that number even meant on the receipt then.
That is the beginning of the negotiating process. I get regularly notes from my insurance about like how the breakouts are of all the bills, and generally they get an 85 to 90% discount, and then they pay 90% of what's left, and I'm left with the remaining basically 1% at that point of the bill. But like, yeah, once you regularly get 90% discounts on everything, that's like when that price was never real in the first place.
I'm sure all that negotiation is very expensive and is why these companies stay in business. So
yeah,
and why they charge so much. But that's neither here nor there. So why do you think this is in the scarcity chapter?
Because the judge said that this information is inadmissible and must be ignored. It is, as Elijah says earlier, forbidden or secret. And therefore, it must be more important and more trustworthy. And therefore, the guy should be given even more money.
Oh, God. That's disconcerting to me. I did that whole episode about my experience as a juror, and I still think about that once in a while. And there were definitely things where things weren't admissible, but they were part of someone's testimony or something. I can't be sure in retrospect if I was perfectly... I know that I couldn't update, 100% honestly as if as a robot on that, right?
Yeah.
Like, once you see and hear something and you're told to ignore that, you just try to, counter update in the other direction. Hopefully we didn't totally fail at doing that. But luckily, we weren't in the business of awarding punishments. It was just... or awarding... damages. It was just, did this person do it or not? So there was less room for us to wiggle on than if we'd been given free range, or the free dynamic of how much do you think this person deserves to pay this person, right?
Do you have any thoughts about how your jury experience went in light of this?
I mean, there was a particular example, because normally during a criminal case, you're no one's allowed to bring up the fact, the previous incidences that have nothing to do with the current case.
Right.
But there was
Which I think is stupid as hell.
I was going to let that go, but why?
Because if someone just fucked up and it's their first offense, I think I realize the jury is not supposed to care about that. The jury is just there to did this one incident happen or not? So, okay, hopefully the judge or someone else takes into consideration this guy is, one of the bottom 1% of humans that are responsible for almost all crime. This is his 5th time in here. We know that he did the other 4 things. He served time for those other 4 things. It's very likely he did this too. All the evidence points to yes. And
our previous punishments haven't shown to be enough of a deterrence. So yeah, let's up the punishment on this one. But yeah, you're right. That's for the judge to decide.
Yeah, but I also think that that does affect how likely it is that someone is guilty. Like,
I totally agree.
if you already know that someone has been in court multiple times for other convictions, then you know he's one of the bottom 1% of humans that do most of the crime.
This was one of the things that was hard to like disregard as a juror was like the fact is like we're just here to see if there's enough evidence here in the courtroom to ascertain whether or not the crimes alleged happened or
Yeah.
whether or not we believe they
Yeah.
did. And
And it's important to have a group that can do that.
yeah, so I think as for the specifically like the jury part of the justice system process, I think it makes sense to have that. Uh,
Yeah.
but like as a rational human, you look at the well, okay, they did this 10 times before. It seems like that ups the odds of them doing it this 11th time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it was hard to kind of disregard those things, but say you're not supposed to bring up previous crimes, and so they brought this up and they brought in a police officer from years ago, described a domestic dispute that was supposed to not be part of the and it was with the same plaintiff and defendant. But that's not supposed to be admissible. The admissible part was that there in fact was a gun in the guy's car. And so when he told this other cop later on, "Oh, I've never had a gun. I don't like guns. I don't own a gun or whatever." Well, here was testimony from a police officer saying, "Well, when I talked to him at this on this other occasion years ago, he had a gun." That part was admissible. But
Okay.
but the rest of like, "Oh, so he's threatened her with a gun before." Okay, well, can't put that into the Bayesian calculation there. Okay, got it. Uh,
Yeah.
that was the weird part.
And it's definitely Bayesian evidence.
Oh,
Just that
100%.
we just have to ignore Bayesian evidence to get good court protocols, I guess.
I think I like it more than the alternative, which would be somebody's been in some shit before, and then they get dragged in for a thing they didn't actually do. If you're allowed to just list off the previous litany of crimes, and it's like, yeah, but that was years ago, and I've stopped. Well, look
Yeah,
at all
I
those crimes
agree.
you've committed before. That's all evidence of this crime. It's like, but it's actually not. God damn it! I could totally see
Right.
from the defendant's perspective how that you would want it that way. And since we're all prospective defendants, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to go with yeah. Emotionally, I agree with you. I don't know if that's just because that's the way I've been taught my whole life, but I'm going to go with I really wish instead of a jury, we could have an AI.
Once those get running really well, I think what would be cool is if you could, as a defendant, if you could elect to have an AI jury or a human jury.
Oh, awesome.
I think that would be great.
If I was innocent, I would go for the AI jury every time.
Totally. And if I was guilty, I might try to plea with some humans and placate, right?
Right.
But you can't use whether they go as with the AI jury or the human jury as evidence of their guilt, So
Yeah.
even if an established pattern is there. Anyway, he wraps this up, like I said, in a way to lean into the next post. So
Yes, he says that the really fundamental problem with desiring the unattainable is that as soon as you actually get it, it stops being attainable. If we cannot take joy in the merely available, our lives will always be frustrated, which
yeah.
is, a great way to tie together this idea of social scarcity and the things he's been saying previously about taking joy in the merely real.
And it's a life lesson for just being for general happiness too. I mean, people always I think chase like when I get the vacation at the end of the year, or even worse, when I get the thing.
Yeah.
Whether that thing is an expensive watch or toy or something, like, oh, I'll be happy when I get that. So, well, now that I've got it, am I actually happier? And he does, I think, relay mention in this post, Tim Ferriss's pointing out that his advice when planning your life: ask which ongoing experiences would make me happy rather than which possessions or status changes. Because will this toy make me happy? No, but will this whatever? Like I bought like a $15 attachment for my garage door that lets me open it with and close it with my phone, and determine from a distance if my door is opened or closed.
Nice.
That was a very good use of $15, and it wasn't like particularly fun to buy, other than like it's fun to have a new gadget. I have a whole folder of apps on my phone called gadgets, but like I've circled back from a mile away to go home and check if the garage door is closed before, right?
Yeah.
So like, is this particularly like fun thing? No, but did it add life value? Hell yeah, it did. Definitely paid its worth.
Nice.
Probably already just in gas money.
I'm glad you have that.
Yeah, the app is called My Q, and I have no idea why, but none of this is good audio. So
All right, so for next time, we are going to read To Spread Science, Keep It Secret, and Initiation Ceremony.
Ooh, I think I remember that one.
I think I do too.
Yeah, and it's because it's memorable. This will be fun. I'm looking forward to these.